In my ongoing effort to help you guys decide what you're going to main in the War Within, it is my duty to bring you guys every update that comes. And there was another massive round of tuning that just hit the beta. So we're going to go through those and I'll try to make it quick, but let's just go down the list and blast through it. So we start off with Druid. Now they were having a big issue in the Mythic Plus healing department. Their raid healing was not at the top. It was toward the bottom. So just a healing issue all around. So they really came and corrected that with this last tuning round and also this one. So Regrowth's initial slam heal increased by 30%. This is massive, especially for Mythic Plus and doing like their closest thing to shock healing outside of like Swiftmend and Nature Swiftness. So a massively needed change. They also changed some of the scaling off of health. So Iron Fur is getting weaker. Renewal heals for 10% less healing, so from 30 to 20. And Frenzied Regen will now heal you for only 20% of your max health instead of 32. Like I said in the last video or 2 videos ago, they're making these changes based on percent health healing because percentage or your health totals are going up by a lot. Now moving on to hero talents, Keeper of the Grove, super snore fest and didn't really add much in terms of power or like fun. It's seeing a lot of buffs. So Dream Bloom healing is increased by 20%. Now, I'm not too sure what they mean by Dream Bloom, but I'm pretty sure it's Dream Surge or the Dream Petals. Maybe they're calling that the Dream Bloom. But I have scoured through these hero talents and I can't find Dream Bloom anywhere. So I'm going to assume it's this, and you guys correct me if I'm wrong. But seeing a bonus to this, a buff to this is massive because it was... you're supposed to play around it. After you summon your Grove Guardian, you're supposed to look to spot heal 3 people, get all those petals, healing other people, but it just was not impactful. So any bonus to that, making it actually worthwhile to look forward to and to press and play around is huge in my books. Power of Nature, seeing an increase to healing to your Rejuve, Efflorescence, and Life Bloom. Now 5% additional healing to these sources. It doesn't look like a lot, but Power of Nature only works while you have your Grove Guardians out with you, which is almost all the time. And this healing is actually gonna add up. Like all these little buffs do add up. If you're a Druid player, you know exactly what I mean. Your Rejuve healing getting 5% more of a bonus, your Life Bloom and your Efflorescence. Now if you pop Flourish with this boosted Rejuve, I mean, like I said, there's so many different ways to scale up a 5% buff to where it feels like more than 5% in an instant. So pretty good change there, but once again, you do have to have your Grove Guardians active for that to be available. The minor Cenarian wards cast from Durability of Nature are getting doubled effective. These were so weak. Your spot healing that your Grove Guardians are going to be doing, apply a small Cenarian ward, and it was tiny. It was doing like no healing, almost not even worth taking. So seeing that healing doubled, it's still a small Cenarian ward compared to what Cenarian ward usually is, but still a hugely needed buff in my books. Bounteous Bloom, Grove Guardian's healing will be increased by a further 10%, massive. You guys know in Mythic Plus and even in Raid, the Grove Guardians could do a large bit of the heavy lifting, so massive buff. All of these, once again, they're small numbers, 10%, 5% here, 3% there, but it adds up. I mean, their healing was so weak, and just because of how RDruid works, all these numbers scale with their mastery even more. So all super good healing buffs in my book. So then Grove Inspirations increases Regrowth, Wild Growth, and Swiftmend's healing by 9% instead of 6%. Once again, a 3% buff, but if you look, Regrowth just got buffed, and this one is special because you don't have to have your Grove Guardians out. This one is just always applied, so these are just buffs to the spells. Should this talent exist, or should the buffs just exist in the tooltip? I'll let you guys decide that, but I think it's still good buffs. Potent enchantments, Tree of Life granted by reforestation lasts 3 additional seconds instead of 2. I don't think this is a big deal because where is it? It shares a node with a talent that not only buffs your damage for Mythic Plus, but also buffs 3 of your very, very core spells. So I doubt they'll take that, but that'll be interesting to see, especially after that talent that it shares a node with just got buffed. And then Harmony of the Grove increases your healing by 6% for each active Grove Guardian, was 3%. Now you can get up to like 4 Grove Guardians out at a time, maybe even a 5th one if you like balance your tree forms correctly. But so you can get some massive giant ramps, or you can just have 6% bonus healing at almost all times, having Grove Guardians cycling whenever you do like whenever you need the healing. So this is huge. I was saying for a capstone talent, this was just so underwhelming. I mean, adding 3% on top of a ramp was just like, man, okay, cool. But adding, now you can stack it up and get some actually juicy numbers on top of all of these other buffs. It might bring Resto Druid's healing back. Now, onto Wildstalker Druid. Symbiotic Blooms prefer players over pets or minions. That should have been in the game already. That's just a quality of life thing if you ask me. But Symbiotic Blooms growing 30% more often will equate to more healing. That's very nice. And then Bond with Nature now increases all healing taken by 3%. It was 10%, so huge nerf there. So Bond with Nature, like I said, that's just going to increase your healing received. So this is a pretty massive nerf to not just like your healing when you take Wildstalker, but also your survivability, because it's reducing your effective health. All of your hots on yourself are going to be healing less. And then Harmonious Constitution now increases regrowth healing to yourself by only 35%. For Resto Druid, it was 50% for both. They actually split it with Feral, which is nice. I like that they're doing that change, splitting it up, but still another nerf to your self-healing with your regrowths is pretty rough, pretty brutal if you ask me. Bursting Growth's healing was increased by 100%. So Bursting Growth, if you cast a Rejuve on a target that does have that hot, which you will be getting more often now, which is really good, yeah, you're going to see more healing from that. That's going to add up in raid. Maybe people will play around with this in raid. You know, you're already Rejuve spamming. Maybe you can chase the Symbiotic Blooms for some Bursting Growth healing. Pretty nice change, and that it might actually help and add up in Mythic Plus as well. And then finally, Implant causes Symbiotic Blooms to grow for 6 seconds, was 4 seconds. Once again, having more time to catch that bloom is just nice. It's just nice. You're going to get more healing from that. And then finally, Vigorous Creepers increases the healing your healing spells do to affected targets by 20% instead of 6%. This is massive. This is a massive increase to your healing. Once again, you can't really control who's going to get the Symbiotic Blooms, but you're going to be seeing it more often. More people are going to have that hot on them. It is just like 6 seconds, so it's not that long, but for those 6 seconds, you're going to see a lot more healing. So if you wait to get some blooms out and then flourish, you're going to be flourishing, stuff like that. This is a really sick change, making the bloom aspect of Wildstalker feel a lot more impactful. Your healing feels more impactful. I'm excited to see if this revives Druid, because it was in a rough state. Let's go ahead and move on to, I believe, Evoker. So Evoker's seeing a lot of changes, a lot of buffs, and a lot of quality of life. So Disintegrate damage, Fire Breath damage, Azure Strike damage, Deep Breath damage, all buffed by 10%. And then Verdant Embrace healing increased by 20%. I love this. This is, other than Engulf, this is like your next best giant instant spot heal, and it has a risk element, so I like to see it healing for a good bit. And then Living Flame healing is increased by 30%. Now, it's worth mentioning all of these things, or a lot of these things, scale other abilities. So Fire Breath seeing a buff will just work better with, I think it's Expanded Lungs, that just buffs its damage anyway, so that's kind of another buff to the Flame Shaper talent tree. Azure Strike, you were almost never pressing it in my experience, or I just felt like it was not worth pressing. So 10% buff is nice, but I would like to see that further pushed up. Deep Breath doing bigger damage is always nice. And then finally, Living Flame healing being increased by 30%. This will help with Chrono Warden, because you're incentivized to spam Living Flame into one target. So having that Living Flame do more healing can help you stack up and reach that soft cap of Chrono Flame more often, and maybe not have to do a bunch of Living Flame spamming. So I love that. And also, it sucks having such a long channel be for a spot heal that has a travel time as well. So having the healing be further incentivized is always good, in my opinion. Now, moving on to the hero talents. So this is where a lot of the quality of life changes come in for Evoker. So Chrono Warden, preservation evokers, your echoes cast from your resonating sphere are no longer going to consume golden opportunity. This to me reads like a quality of life change or a bug fix. I don't know why your resonating sphere echoes were consuming the golden opportunity. Your echoes were just able to be 100% more effective, but you would much rather have that be applied to a full strength echo than one of the small ones that come with temporal anomaly. So that makes sense, or resonating sphere, I should say, down here. So that makes sense. So then it would just be a 60% echo instead of a full powered one. So that's very nice and gives you, the player, a bit more to play around with that. So I like that a lot. Also, Flame Shaper sees some changes, which I love Flame Shaper. So Consume Flame no longer double dips healing and damage mods. So the reason why, I was wondering why this was doing so much, like insane amounts of healing. Consume Flames was using the damage modifiers, I'm guessing, as well from Engulf to enhance how much this burst healing was doing is how this reads, which makes sense. It kind of sucks because I loved that burst healing aspect of Consume Flame. It's one of my favorite things that I've been playing around with this tier. So I'm hoping that Engulf kind of keeps its strength because of this change. I hope this doesn't like hurt it too bad. Although I believe it's just like 1 or 2 dots that you could have scaled this with. But yeah, that I mean, I guess it makes sense. It shouldn't be working like that. But then finally, Engulf can now be stored in stasis, which is huge. Because before you could either like temporal anomaly, get all those echoes on everyone, and then dream breath to apply 2 dream breaths, and then engulf one person to snap those double dream breaths, or you could dream breath, temporal anomaly, and engulf to snap AoE, to snap everyone's single dream breath. And the problem is those 3 combo buttons, that 3-button combo, you could not store engulf in stasis. So now being able to do that, being able to store like dream breath, temporal anomaly, and then engulf is sick. Is super sick. Just like, I don't know, I don't know if it's gonna be amazing. I hope it is, because it sounds pretty amazing. But that is a much needed change. It only makes sense. It's a healing spell after all. If you can store Living Flame, you should be able to store Engulf, so it makes sense. Finally, Traveling Flame will now prefer injured allies when seeking a new target for Dream Breath. So adding a smart heal element to this thing that's already kind of random is just nice. I mean, you're spreading your Dream Breath onto another person, so you would hope that they are someone that needs healing. So they probably just added like Renewing Mist AI here. So that's really cool. Good change there. It should have been in the game already. And then let's move down to the just preservation changes. So Spirit Bloom's healing was increased by 20%, which once again is another buff to, let's see, I think it's Chrono Warden's. Yeah, so Spirit Bloom heals for an additional 30% of its healing over 8 seconds with Chrono Warden Evoker. So this is like a second-hand buff to the Chrono Warden talent tree. So very cool there, but just an added bonus to Spirit Bloom. It should just chunk people's health bars in Mythic Plus. And then finally, or next up, Reversion will now extend its duration by 30% when it's refreshed, which is so cool. I think this is like, this is a special way to add it to the pandemic window, I'm guessing, but in my opinion, all HOTS should be in the pandemic window if they're not already. I never really noticed that this wasn't happening, if that's what this is, but I will say it does suck to reapply reversions, which you do so often because your golden hour, a lot of times you need to spot heal with golden hour and you have to reapply reversion to the same person. So having a little bit less punishment for that is always welcome. Emerald Blossom and Echo Cast will no longer consume essence bursts if they are released from stasis. This is massive. If you pop a stasis that had an Emerald Blossom or an Echo stored up in it, which in Mythic Plus you do Echoes a lot, in Raid I'm guessing you might do Emerald Blossoms at some points, then they're not going to consume your Essence Burst charges. So you can use that stasis. I know a lot of people use it for like Echo ramps in Raid. So you can do like Echo, Temporal Anomaly in your stasis, and then unleash that stasis, Echo, Temporal Anomaly. And then if you had 2 charges of Essence Burst, it was consuming the Essence Bursts instead of just letting you cast 2 more free Essences and then use all of your I think it's essence. But so that should have just been in the game, guys. Come on, that should have just been in the game. Lifebind will now trigger its healing from heals that are considered procs. Now, this one took me a while to think of what they meant, but Lifebind, when you Verdant Embrace someone, you're lifebound to them. And now if you get like proc heals, they will also funnel into that person. I'm guessing that's like off of things like, oh, where is it? Yeah, this one. So like if you were to cast an Emerald Blossom, it'll instantly heal you. I guess that counts as like a proc. If you did that while you're lifebound to someone, maybe it would funnel that healing. Weird wording there. I would love to see what the best use cases for this change are, but looks like more healing, so hey, a welcome change nonetheless. Now moving on to the more superior green class with Monk, there are some base Monk changes, and once again, these are just further building on the list of percent health changes. So Yu'lon's Grace will now stack up 1% instead of 2% every 3 seconds. And it's also 3 seconds instead of 2 seconds. So huge nerf to Yu'lon's Grace, because you could stack up quite a big shield very quickly. And this just equated to a lot of self-effective health, but also some good healing. It was actually a good healing source, or like a good throughput source in Raid. So you can't really pad with this anymore. Maybe they want us to take another defensive instead, because doesn't it share with diffuse magic? I don't know, maybe. But then also healing wins. Whenever you use your transfer, it would just chunk heal you for 15% of your max health. 10% now. I don't think anyone was taking this before. Maybe Brewmasters to kind of kite and gain some health back. I don't know, but they should have just made this change for Brewmasters, in my opinion. I don't think we were abusing it at all. But moving on, Conduit, the Celestials. The damage of Celestial Conduit, our new button, was nerfed by only 8%. Now, I'm happy it was just the healing. As far as the damage goes, as long as this button, like during the duration that you channel it, as long as you're doing more damage channeling it than you would if you were just casting Spinning Crane Kick, then I'm fine with them nerfing the damage, if I'm being honest. But I'm glad they didn't touch the healing, is the main takeaway there. Moving on to the other hero talent tree, Master of Harmony for Mistweavers. Manifestation effectiveness reduced to 50% was 100% now. I'll be honest, I am pissed about this one. I mean, Master of Harmony, at least for Mistweavers, isn't as viable as the other option in either Mythic Plus or Raid, as far as I know. And Manifestation was kind of the only fun talent on this whole tree. So your Chi Burst did double damage. Now it only does 1.5 times damage. It's like, come on, you can't let us have anything fun. Yeah, I hate that, man. I was loving the chunky Chi Bursts. Yeah, this one's upsetting. If you want to go watch my Master of Harmony video to see how enjoyable it was, I'm sure like it doing bonus damage will still be enjoyable. It just, man, it felt good having one button feel very impactful. Even if it was like you're missing out on a juicier hero talent tree. So that one's sad, like so sad. And not to mention Chi Wave being so pitiful in healing and in damage. So it's like, for Mistweavers at least, not for Brewmasters. So yeah, that one sucks a lot. Balanced Stratagem effect was reduced to 3% instead of 5%. So this is cycling between physical and nature spells. For us, that means like Rising Sun Kick, and then like an Enveloping Mist would get boosted by this, or a Vivify would get boosted by this. So this one does hurt us as well. However, I think a lot of these nerfs were really designed to kind of keep Brewmaster under control, from what I'd assume, because you could cycle between like a Keg Smash and then your Fire, whatever your Breath of Fire is called. Then those two would buff each other. So it's just, it sucks that these just suck, man. That talent tree is already so disappointing with how Overwhelming Force doesn't work off of your cleaving blackout kicks. It's just, I don't know. I feel like this was kind of unnecessary, but maybe I'm just missing something. Finally, Way of 1,000 Strikes vitality was reduced to 30%, whereas it was 50%. So this is where your Rising Sun Kick, Blackout Kick, and Tiger Palm are giving you more vitality. Yeah, so I guess there are some further buffs coming that I'm about to talk about to like your kicks and your ancient teachings and stuff. Spoiler alert. So I think they're just trying to anticipate us taking away 1,000 strikes and maybe Master of Harmony and like a fist weaving build making its way into raid. But this one is still, once again, all three of these are questionable to me if I'm being honest. But let's go and move on to some juicy stuff, which is the Mistweaver overall changes. So Ancient Teachings now gives 170% of its damage as healing instead of 150%. A small tweak, but you guys know any small tweaks to Ancient Teachings do add up. And this is great for Mythic Plus, excellent for Mythic Plus. It's only good in raid if Ancient Teachings is viable, like an Ancient Teachings Chiji build. And some of these changes do lead me to believe that the developers want it to be, at least giving us more of an option between the two. But for now in beta, at least before these changes hit live, Chiji just was not competing with Yu'lon and with the caster Tear of Morning build. Let's move on. Speaking of Tear of Morning, now causes only 12% of Enveloping Mist healing to transfer to allies with your Renewing Mist instead of 20%. This sucks because if you had 5 Renewing Mist active and you cast a Tear of Morning on one of your allies, you're basically all in an instant getting a free Enveloping Mist worth of healing to heal people. You only need a 5 Renewing Mist, which is so achievable. So every Enveloping Mist cast, you're basically getting 2 Enveloping Mist worth of casts, or worth of healing. But now you need, what would that be, 8? 8 is 96, 8 and a third. You need 8.33 Renewing Mist instead of 5 to get a full Enveloping Mist worth of healing on average. Look, I'll be honest, Enveloping Mist was cranking. I've already written my guide, my script for my guide coming out next year, and it was all about Enveloping Mist. So now I've got to go change that. So I'm more so salty about that. But I will say that it didn't really feel fun just spamming Enveloping Mist around, getting full value from Tear of Morning, because there are so many modifiers to Enveloping Mist healing. I guess I could go ahead and show you the 2 big ones. But there's your tier set gives it a 10% buff, but also temple training. So that's 2 separate 10% buffs to your Enveloping Mist. So giving it 2 different buffing modifiers was just making it kind of go out of control with Tear of Morning and all the healing you could get. So having Vivify now be your cleave spell, I think that's what they want. I think they want us to kind of dial back the Enveloping Mist cast, go back to Vivify's. At least that's what I'm guessing. But also they're nerfing the Tear of Morning bonus that it gives to your Vivify cleaving. It's now just giving a 15% bonus. Now, I will say it sucks that they're nerfing Tear of Morning so hard. However, if you look at Tear of Morning and compare it to a lot of the other capstone talents that Mistweavers have and that all other healers have, this is one of the more powerful talents on all of the healer talent trees. So like it does make sense that it's getting some heavy-handed nerfs. I just wish that they'd redistribute some of that power a bit more than they are doing. But moving on, Jade Bond now increases the mastery healing from Chiji by 60%. It was 40%. It's been 40% ever since I can remember. So Jade Bond, this is another reason why I think they want us to consider Chiji in a raiding environment even more. So Chiji, you're kicking up a ton of mastery procs. If you take Jade Bond, you're going to be able to reduce your cooldown of Chiji. Then you can kind of out heal, or you can outvalue if you would have just had a 1-minute cooldown Chiji, is the idea behind Jade Bond. But the mastery procs just weren't hitting. Mastery, although they've reworked it to high heavens and back, it still just was a little underwhelming. I've tested it so many times, I just wish it would have started off with these buffs, but now I have to go back and test it happily, honestly. But Jade Bond seeing a buff is huge. Huge. It's a 1.5 times buff. So massive to the mastery healing that Chiji's kicking up. That's a lot of healing. Moving on, Yu'lon's Grace now absorbs oh, I'm sorry. Before we move on, I do have to mention that this Jade Bond healing, still, even though it's getting a big buff, you're not doubling those mastery procs with Essence Font. So yeah, it's a buff, but it's kind of like a rebalancing with the removal of Essence Font. Okay, now let's move on. So Yu'lon's Grace, that stacking shield that you get, now absorbs 1% health, was 1.5%, and may stack up to 10% max health, was 15%. Another nerf to Yu'lon's Grace. That's 2 already. That's weird. It says 1% here, and now it says 1% again. So I don't know what they mean there. was 1.5. I I don't know. But this is just another nerf to percentage max health scaling things. And then finally, the next two buffs, the final two Mistweaver buffs, are Vivify healing is increased by 30%. Once again, the Tier of Morning build, you're just spamming Enveloping Mist a lot more instead of capitalizing on all the Renewing Mist with Vivify casts. And I think they want us to be spot heal bots, not cleave bots, or not hot spamming bots. So, incentivizing Vivify casts will incentivize rescue healing a lot more. So people get hit by mechanics, you heal them back up. If an ally has a hot or a dot on them, instead of just spamming Enveloping Mist around to get big healing, you're incentivized to spam Vivifies on that target. Also, this plays with our tier set. Our tier set mentions casting Vivify on our allies that have hots on them to extend the duration of those hots. But before, it was just more worth it to cast an Enveloping Mist, since it was basically a buy one get one free, or buy one get one plus free. Whereas now it's a lot less than that, or on average it'll be a lot less than buy one get one free Enveloping Mists. So that's actually huge. Also, the final change, Gust of Mist, which is our mastery healing, is increased. So this is a buff to Chiji and a buff to just fist weaving in general, because now your rising sun kicks are kicking up more Gust of Mist, or kicking up Gust of Mists. So another reason why I think they're trying to also kind of tilt us a little bit more in the direction, or at least to the middle of the Chiji versus Yu'lon race. So huge changes, huge implications. I'm excited to test these, and I hope that Ancient Teachings is at least on par with Yu'lon. That's my hope for the tier. But we'll just keep testing. All right, now moving on to Paladin. So once again, we're just going to be talking about the Holy Paladin changes, and we'll start off with Lightforge Blessing. Now affects 2 additional allies. Is when you slam your shield, you heal 4 allies for 1% of your max health. So this is just another thing that scales off max health. It's weird that they're nerfing the number of targets versus the percentage of health. But you know what? I guess it makes sense. This is more so for prot paladins, because once again, they have more health, but also they're pressing this button a lot more often than holy paladins, or they're allowed to, I guess. Also, the tooltip here still says 4 people, so it's a bit weird, but that makes sense. It falls in line with what they've been saying they're going to do. It is nerfing holy paladins Shield of the Righteous by a small amount, though. But Flash of Light healing increased by 20%. I think a lot of Holy Paladins, you can't be mad about this, but I know a lot of Holy Paladins are tired of being further incentivized to cast their hard cast heals. They would rather just all that power be in Holy Shock. But some people still enjoy the casting Paladin. I know some people still comment on my videos about it. So a good buff there, because their shock healing has seen some nerfs in recent, so it's good to see their spot healing get some buffs to compensate. Shield of the Righteous increases your armor by less now. It goes from 170% of your strength down to 150% of your strength. This is going to gut Prot Paladin by a lot, but for Holy Paladins, it's also going to hurt your beefiness in Mythic Plus. And that can hurt. It can really add up when you're looking at those like top end meta groups. They're just further incentivized not to look at a Holy Paladin in that healer slot now. But this is honestly very minimal. But all of these like mitigation changes will add up. They really will. Now, the Dusk buff from Of Dusk and Dawn reduced your damage taken by 4%, was 5%. Once again, a very small change, but stack that survivability change on top of this survivability change on top of this one, and it's like, yeah, like I said, they start to add up. However, Word of Glory healing is increased by 10%. Love this. Love this. Keep the WOG healing buffs coming. This is to both Prot Paladin, or all 3 Paladin specs, so it's weird to see Prot and Ret also get another 10% buff to their WOG healing, but it makes so much sense for Holy Paladin. I love that. Now, Sanctified Plate's armor increase no longer applies to bonus armor from Shield of the Righteous. So I'm guessing this scales based off of percentage of your armor. So I'm guessing that means that whenever you Shield of the Righteous, it would then add that into the equation of the percentage, but now it doesn't make sense. But once again, another way to kind of nerf your survivability as a Holy Paladin. I feel like a lot of these changes are coming to nerf the survivability of Paladin when maybe they should have just nerfed the survivability of like Ret and Prot, and maybe one of these hit Holy. But it does seem pretty heavy-handed for Holy Paladins. But let's look. Luckily, there are no other Holy Paladin changes. So as a Holy Paladin, you can enjoy your 20% stronger Flash of Lights and probably die to more rot mechanics throughout the tiers. So pretty annoying, but hey, they're a very tanky class right now. But once again, I would have liked to see some of these survivability changes only hit Prot Paladin. Now, priests are joining in the discussion, and priests are in a weird spot. I feel like Disc is just underperforming in Raid, but it felt pretty fine in Mythic Plus. And honestly, the healing and damage of Holy Priest felt in a good spot, admittedly, with both hero talent trees. The problem was the mana. The mana was a huge issue for Holy Priest. You literally had to eat or drink between every single pool. So Flash Heals healing is increased by 20%. This is huge for both of them. It's really good for like Disc Priest for that spot healing with the free or instant cast Flash Heals. To reapply Torments is really nice. So whenever you have to stop and actually spot heal someone, it sucks as a Disc Priest. So having it be more impactful is good. Whereas with Holy Priest, you're playing around Flash Heals in a lot of cases. So this is awesome for Holy Priest. I'm glad they kept this in for Holy Priest. Also, Power Word Shield Absorb amount is increased by 20%. Very nice. That shield is really good. I wonder though, does this also apply to the shield that your Prayer of Mendings apply as a Holy Priest? I don't know, but very interesting. Good buffs here already. Power Word Life healing increased by 20%. This I love. This I love. So Power Word Life is your execute heal. Where is it? It is here. So if someone's below a certain threshold, you shock heal them. And it had a 15-second cooldown. You can get it down to a 12-second cooldown, which is great. And it boosts that threshold up. But this, honestly, in Dragonflight was slam healing people. It would take them from like 35% health up to like 70 to a safe amount. But in my testing, it has felt so underwhelming. So to see a buff is massive. Because for Holy Priest, it was literally doing less healing than your Holy Word Serenities. Which to me makes no sense. I think this should be that life-saving grace. So very nice buff there. Let's move on to just Disc Priest for a bit. We'll come back to Holy Priest in a second. But for Disc Priest with Void Weaver, your Entropic Rift damage was reduced by a large amount, but this was doing a large amount of damage. So 30% buff or nerf here. Also, Void Blast, the smite replacement when you're in your Shadow Covenant, reduced by 12%. These are massive, massive damage nerfs. However, Void Heart, the talent that boosts your atonement healing. Where is it? Oh, I'm in the wrong talent tree. However, Void Heart, which boosts your atonement healing while you have your Rift active, will now increase your healing by 20%, not 10%. So a massive buff to your atonement healing, but you're trading that off for less damage. I think this will be a net positive. Since you're still getting like Mind Blast and Penance full damage, you're just doing less Entropic Rift and Void Blast damage. I think this will be a net positive. I have not like sat down and done the math though, so don't quote me on that. But just from looking at it, this seems like a fine change. Trading off damage for healing or for balancing out the lack of damage is good as a healer. More further discipline reworks outside of hero talents. All healing is no longer reduced by 3%. This is such a weird wording. To me, it looks like they're just like reverting an old 3% nerf. So you know what? Cool. If that's how it is, then cool. I do like that. So 3% healing buff basically added back to Discipline Priest is very nice. Power Word Radiance also sees increased healing. This is really good, and it works well with Disc Priest's Oracle talent. Where is it? Waste no time. So this makes it instant cast. Really, really good Mythic Plus change, and this should also help their ramps a lot too. So just adding more healing to your basically your one AoE healing spell is very good. And then Penance healing is increased by 20%. Now, don't get this wrong. This isn't Penance damage. This is if you target your ally with Penance, it'll do increased healing. Now, I don't know how it's going to look in the War Within, but at least in Dragonflight, the higher you went up in keys, the more likely you were to need to penance your allies. So this is great. Having your like spot heals do more healing is going to help smooth out Discipline Priest playstyle a lot. So great change there. Now moving back to Holy Priest, once again we're coming in with the flash heal increase. Now we get a heal increase. Guys, is it back? Is Lightweaver back? I love Lightweaver. So yeah, massive buffs there for Holy. Once again, they were running out of mana because you'd have to spam like 5 or 6 flash heals into someone to like top them up when they're taking no damage at all. So you just had no time between packs to sit down and drink. So it was just brutal. But now your heals, your spot heals are going to be more effective. That should be a lot better. Now, Holy Word Serenity healing is also increased by 20%. This will also save you a lot of charges or a lot of times when your power word life is down. So yeah, your 2 massive shock heals as a Holy Priest are getting buffs. This is insane for Mythic Plus. Will allow you to save your allies a lot more and have to spam your heals a lot less. Because I tried making a video showing off how much damage Archon Holy Priest could do, and I literally was not able to cast any damage spells because I just had to heal because all of my heals were so weak. So these are much needed buffs, both of these. And then finally, Divine Images Healing Light spell. Healing is increased by 20%, which will add up to a lot of healing over a dungeon, over a raid. So very, very, very nice changes to both priest specs. You priest mains out there can go to sleep tonight very happy. Let's move on to Shaman. So Shaman is kind of like still ongoing, a complete transformation of what it used to be. And they've done a lot of good strides in the right direction, but I think they're continuing that with a lot of these changes. So Healing Surge, its healing is increased by 20%. This is amazing because they've changed a lot of talents to try to make you incentivized to cast this a lot more, and I think you will in Mythic Plus. Instead of chain heal spamming in both forms of content, you're gonna like do your single target healing a lot more and not have to rely on Healing Wave as much. If your mana allows it, you can Healing Surge more often. So things like Undulation, you can either Healing Wave or Healing Surge to get this bonus. But now you can like Healing Surge 4 times, proc Undulation, which works well with your Farseer, which makes sense. Or things like Earth Living Weapon, your improved Earth Living Weapon, that bottom line says your Healing Surge always triggers Earth Living. So you have a lot of different incentives to cast Healing Surge now, so it healing more is very nice. Love to see that change. A Farseer Resto Shaman talent change was Unleash Life now calls Ancestor for 12 seconds, was 6 seconds. So you're going to have an Ancestor for twice the amount of time. I believe that shared the node with the Undulation one. This makes sense because you can trigger Undulation about twice as often as you can cast Unleash Life, whichever of these 2 choice nodes you take. So in a lot of cases, like if you play Mistweaver, you know the Shaylun's Gift ones where it's like if you take Shao's Lesson, you have to get half as many stacks than if you take Veil of Pride. So this makes sense that they're doubling the Ancestor length or duration if you take Unleash Life instead of Undulation. I like that change a lot. That's just good insight from them. Then moving down to the Restoration, Riptide's initial, so the spot heal of Riptide is increased by 20%. This is huge because they have a lot of talents that are buffing your Riptides, and none of the tooltips worked before this change, so I'm glad to see that my dumb self can actually read the numbers here. But you have a lot of different ways to scale your Riptide's healing, and having that scaled in Mythic Plus in particular is exceptional because spot healing is always really welcomed in Mythic Plus. So that's really good. Also, Unleash Life's healing is increased by 20%. I don't know if they're going to go back to taking Unleash Life. I love Unleash Life because I would always use it on like a chain heal, or your Healing Rain was really fun in Raid. But it would be really cool if they go back to Unleash Life. I hope that this buff is enough incentive to do so, and I think it competing with a talent that works off of your Healing Surges after your Healing Surges I've seen so much beefing up, it only makes sense that it's seeing a buff to make it more competitive. Moving on, Healing Wave. Once again, this is kind of like the competitor for Healing Surge as your spot heal. Seeing a healing increase, it makes sense because I'm pretty sure I saw in raid logs they were going back to healing surge spamming a bit, whereas before they weren't even casting the spell. So this makes sense. A very good buff. Once again, I think all the healing buffs are good for Resto Shaman, except for the ones that we're about to talk about. So Ascendance now duplicates only 70% of all healing, which it was 80%. So they're taking a lot of power out of your major cooldowns. Let's go ahead and read this next line before I finish that point. So Ancestral Guidance now only transfers 10% of your healing into healing, whereas it was 25%. So yeah, these are like your two major cooldowns. One thing that's important to note though is that Ancestral Guidance also transfers some of your damage into healing, so that is not changed. But still, nerfing your two biggest cooldowns, I guess alongside Spirit Link Totem, but transferring some of that power into your base kit, I will say, is very welcome for a Mythic Plus standpoint, because you don't want to have to live paycheck to paycheck or cooldown to cooldown. You would like to actually do some healing outside of those, so that's very nice. At least that's a glass half full approach, but man, this does kind of suck. I wish they would have put these buffs in, let us play around with it a bit, and then seen if they needed to do this, but it looks like they've had some testing already. And then finally, Undulation can now be tracked through a counter on the Healing Wave and Healing Surge icons. Now, I think I was doing this from a weak aura, kind of like I do my blackout kicks, but this is actually really cool. So now you can see how many you need to cast to trigger Undulation, which is really good and very helpful when you're playing Farseer, since you do play around that a lot with Call of the Ancestors. And then finally, I think that's everything, right? I know the alphabet, right? Yeah, that's it. That is all the changes coming to healers. So, man, a lot of sweeping buffs, like a lot of massive buffs, but also a lot of big nerfs. And yeah, they've said that they're going to nerf a lot of the percentage health changes or percentage health healing spells or shielding spells. And they've done that. They really have. But I don't know, man. Some of these other changes, like the Holy Paladin changes, kind of suck. They're just going to be a little squishier than they were before. And also for my Mistweaver friends, dude, the Chi Burst nerf, why? Blizzard, why? That one I took right in the gut, right in the heart. But guys, that's going to do it for this video. Like I said, I try to make it quick. I did not. I'm so sorry. That is the dev notes for July 17th. This is coming to the beta. These might make it to the War Within. I wouldn't hold your breath on all of these making it to War Within. But guys, thank you so much for watching this video, and thank you for all the support lately. You guys are amazing, especially these patrons. These are the guys that support the channel the most. And if you want to join their names, make sure and check out that link down in the description below. And you guys can help carry this channel, allow me to do what I want to do with my life. So thank you guys so much. I'll see you guys in the next video. I'm going to go drink some water. Until then, take care.